Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And so Trump seems to have begun his trade war proper now. Only he seemed to want his main focus to be on China before the election, but instead seems to have hit Mexico, Canada and Taiwan by mistake. The Chinese, of course, are having a good laugh about it. Republican members of Congress are reportedly worried because they thought he might be calmer for his second term, despite his promises to the contrary. But he thinks he might exclude oil from the tariffs. Seems he doesn't care about the cost of groceries going up, but better not add too much to the price of fuel, it appears. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you stay notified. So, seems a bit surreal, actually, reflecting Trump's pursuit of the American Brexit on the 5th anniversary of the actual Brexit. Applying economic sanctions to yourself didn't work out too well for us, I have to say. But I'm sure Trump has a much better plan. He's announced that he will be applying 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports to the USA imminently, though he says he might exclude oil. Remains to be seen if he'll exclude other things as well. His justification for the oil thing was his usual rambling. I quote, "They send us oil, we'll see. It depends on what the price is. If the oil is properly priced, if they treat us properly, which they don't." Which makes about as much sense as anything else he says. So he's saying he won't put tariffs on the oil if it's priced right. Now, the implication, I assume, being that he expects the oil to be priced low. But if he wants lower oil prices, why is he even thinking about putting tariffs on them, which raises the price? And America needs a lot of oil from Canada. The impact of him putting 25% tariffs on Canadian oil, crude oil, that would be interesting. Besides, neither Mexico nor Canada are offering any price for oil. The price is whatever is agreed between the exporter and the customer. Not really much in the way of involvement from any of the three governments involved in Trump's first major trade war battle. Then there's China. So remember, he was going to properly clobber China. Oh yeah, I mean, he was talking about 10 to 20% tariffs for lots of other countries. And it was going to be 60% for China on most of their stuff. 200% on electric vehicles, as I recall. But now that he's actually president, he's increased the tariffs that he was alluding to for Canada and Mexico. And he's massively downgraded it for China. And he's talking about slapping tariffs on Taiwanese chips. This would be the Taiwan which Trump reckons he's backing against Chinese imperialism. So in terms of his early game, Trump appears to be giving China an easy ride with reported 10% tariffs, which is not ideal, of course, but a way better deal than America's closest allies and trading partners. And China, of course, is better able to withstand it. I mean, they were getting ready for 60%. I mean, they could even profit from it. Instead, Trump seems to be clobbering one of America's allies in the Pacific, a move which, of course, only helps China. I'm seeing already articles in multiple economics outlets talking about how actually China could end up being the winner from Trump's nonsense here. No wonder American journalists are starting to report that Republicans on Capitol Hill are a little bit anxious. Somehow, don't ask me how, but somehow some of them thought his second term would be more settled. I mean, he promised chaos. It was a huge part of his campaign. He wasn't quiet about it. He shouted it. Why on earth did they think he would just like sit in the Oval Office for 4 years drinking like milky cups of coffee and chilling out? He promised to go to war with half the world and half of his own country. Were they not listening? But his tariff wars are just an extortion racket, of course. For example, I see Facebook has settled with him. See, after the insurrection, Facebook banned the accounts of some of those involved, including Trump. He took them to court. I think it's fair to say he was probably not going to win the case. But now that he's president and Zuckerberg has had to fall into line, he's conceded the case and paid $25 million to Trump. It's not a legal settlement. It's a tribute to the emperor, isn't it? His first bit of extortion successfully completed. And now he has his eyes set on Canada and Mexico after the little skirmish with Colombia. And no, despite what some people thought they saw, about Colombia holding its ground early this week. Even days later, that does not appear to be the case at all. How could it be as well? How could it be? Trump is planning a trade war this weekend with literally his number 1, 2, and 3 trading partners. Why on earth would he get cold feet about number 28 on the list? So before long, we'll see what the reaction of Canada and Mexico is. They say they will take action. We'll find out, assuming it's not already known by the time the video comes out. And if Trump decides to focus on this one before expanding his mafia operation around the world, or does he just throw a dart at a map of the world every few days, just like, oh, who are we going to do trade sanctions to this today, President? Okay, dart. Actually, that might not be a bad idea. Russia would occupy quite a bit of real estate on a world map, wouldn't it? He might accidentally tighten the screw on his former hero. Will he? Because he's already reined it back on Ukraine. He's already taken action against Ukraine. You know, will he use his neighbours as a test case to see the effects before widening the strategy? After all, he's about to hit America's top 2 trade partners with economic sanctions this weekend, and then the third one a little bit later. If the short-term outcome looks like a win to him, obviously that would embolden him to go further. But how would he judge it to be a success? Assuming neither country gives him what he wants, that is, or at least entirely what he wants. Because obviously it would hit both the Mexican and Canadian economies with immediate effect, of course. But it would do the same to the US economy as well. Will Trump be watching for the domestic reaction? Oh, I tell you what, if he puts 25% on Canadian oil, he won't, of course he won't. But if he did, we'll have something to talk about next week. Remember, the consequences of massively raising the cost of goods in your own market is that people have less money to spend on other things. You know, in prioritising essentials, which may be imported from Canada or Mexico, Americans may not be able to spend as much on luxuries, goods produced in America. Like, even if those people, because the idea, of course, with Trump is, oh, we'll make the Mexican and Canadian stuff really expensive so people buy American. It's like, well, okay, so let's say they do that. They're still spending more because there's a reason they're not buying the American stuff without the tariffs. And there's only so much of it, right? So you're still going to leave people with less money to spend on other things. And those other things are probably American products. So there's a good chance. You know, so there's likely to be a lot of big businesses in America backing Trump who may not be all that keen on his policy of squeezing their customers' incomes. Trump may think that his plan just encourages Americans to buy American, but where does he think the extra production comes from to compensate for a significant loss of trade with the country's 2 biggest suppliers? Because that's what he wants to achieve. In the case of Canada and Mexico, he says he's taken the action to force them to deal with his immigration and drugs problems at the border. Now, if I were them and they didn't fancy just applying retaliatory tariffs, because that just stokes their own inflation, maybe what they should do is say, okay, you've got a problem. Yeah, well, we are, because they have both said, look, we are trying to help, deal with your migrant and drug problem. But we don't want these tariffs. So I'll tell you what, until you take the tariffs off, we're actually just going to throw more drugs and migrants your way. Besides, wasn't Trump supposed to be sending half the US Army to police the border? What happened to that idea? What happened to the wall as well? That's not back this time, you notice. That, what was it, a 50-mile stretch of wall he ended up with that you could easily climb over. People demonstrated it. Of course, it would be Panama, I suppose, would be the most anxious. No, I don't think anyone enjoys dealing with a global financial crisis because America voted for a rapidly fading man-child again. But Canada could actually be invaded. I'm not sure I believe that Trump would be allowed to invade Greenland. I'm not sure I can rule out shenanigans, though. But Panama, I think, is maybe vulnerable. But we will see more next week, I suppose. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.